Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, what happens to people who are getting out of prison? How do they find work? How do they turn their life around? We'll be talking to the founder of a nonprofit that is helping people with a past realize their future. That's next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny
5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, obviously, we can all agree that when people get out of prison, they've served their debt to society. We want them to find a new path. And to talk about that today, the founder of an amazing organization called Forgiven Felons, Jay Dan Gumm. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, your story is so inspiring. Please share it with the audience.
Well, Forgiven Felons, before it was the organization that it is now, it was a mindset change that occurred when I was in prison. I went to prison. I was a party animal. I was an alcoholic, and I was also an overachiever. So I got 5 DWIs, and after you get that many, the state of Texas just says, you know what, you need a timeout. And so I was sentenced on May 21st, 2003, with my dad and 2 sisters in the courtroom. A judge in the Ellis County District Court said, to the court, I don't see a very bright future for Mr. Gumm. And then he read my 5 years for my 4th DWI, 5 years for my 5th DWI. And I was so out of it at that point that the tears of my dad and sisters didn't even move me. And so when I got to prison, it was just, I got right into that prison game, gambling, associating with, prison's all segregated. I didn't get into a gang, but in prison you pretty much hang with your color or you're going to get beat up. And so I got into a fight one day and got thrown in the hole in lockup. ADSEG is what we call it, administrative segregation. And I grew up in church. So that cell was the sum of all my decision making of my life up until that point. And I was just like, man, there's got to be more than this. And I felt like at that moment, I felt like I had a God moment, He let me know that he wasn't through with me, that I haven't messed up enough, and I'd done a lot more crimes that I never got caught for. That if I were to be sentenced to prison, I would probably still be in prison if I were to be in trouble for everything I've committed. And I just didn't think I deserved another chance, a second chance, a 15th chance. I was such an alcoholic that my mom and dad would regularly have to pick me up on the side of the highway. The police would call them because they got tired of doing paperwork, and they would call, and I would suicidal, depressed, and I just knew the burden that I had on my own family. And so to me, prison was, all right, I'm not a burden on anybody anymore, until my mom and dad came to see me every weekend. And then it became a financial burden, a time burden. And so when I was sitting in that solitary confinement cell for 8 days, that first day I just felt like God was kind of saying, you know what, I still have plans for you. I still have a future for you, and I want you to help others. I don't want to just make you new, I want you to help others. And so I got out of the hole after 8 days, and I had a new mindset. But my question was, how am I going to do all these things that I feel called to do with this word felon attached to my name? It's hard to find a place to live. It's hard to find, it's hard to even go to church anymore when you have a criminal background. You can't get a job hardly. That's gotten a little bit better, a lot better. But right now, the housing for felons is horrible. It's horrible. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? And I kind of asked God, I don't know if you've ever asked God a question, but I said, can you take this word away from me? Expunge, whatever. And he said, no, I want you to embrace it. But just because you embrace something doesn't mean you have to let it identify you. And so I embraced it. And he said, basically, you don't have to be just a felon because felon's a noun. Kind of took me to English class. Felon's a noun. And he said, but if you put an adjective in front of a noun, it changes the way you see that noun. So the word forgiven changed my perspective on the noun felon. So it was a mindset change. And then from there, I was like, I got mentored by a couple of guys, and they got out, and they were back in prison before I got out.
Wow.
I had another question for God. If you had those guys mentoring me and they didn't make it, how the heck am I going to make it? And he said, I'm going to give you this dream, and as long as you pursue this dream, you'll never come back to prison in this capacity. And that dream was to have a transitional house for men to help them get out and stay out. And our recidivism rate is nationally is anywhere between 70 and 80%. Texas, it's about 40 to 50%. And so we have 2 transitional houses, and we've helped since 2012. We've helped over 250 men, and we have a 7.5% recidivism rate.
That is unbelievable, and your program is so amazing that it's gotten the attention of the national media. So let's go ahead and go to a clip right now.
On May 21st, 2003, they bring me from the county jail, and the judge reads my sentences for my 4th and 5th DWI. I was going to do prison time. I was in such a bad place that even the tears of my dad and my sisters who were sitting in the courtroom when they read 5 years for the 4th DWI, 5 years for the 5th DWI, the tears of my family didn't even move me. About a month later, I was sent to prison. On September 18th, 2003, I got into a fight and got locked up in solitary confinement for 8 days. And it was those 8 days where my life was changed. Every day it seemed like I had a different conversation with God. And after those 8 days, the first thing he had me do was become mentored. Then after about 1.5 years, he flipped it and had me mentoring other guys in prison. And so I knew whatever I was doing in prison is what I was gonna do when I got out. First thing I did within the first 6 months was file a DBA, start Forgiven Felons ministry, and we began discipling and mentoring and preaching. Same thing I was doing when I left prison, and I began doing it out here. Even when I was in my room or my cell one year praying, and I said, Lord, you want me to do all these things, but I have this word felon attached to my name the rest of my life. It's gonna be a hard road ahead with that label. Is there anything you can do to get rid of that label? He said, I want you to embrace it, but not be identified by it. And there's a difference between embracing something and letting it identify you. And so he said, from this day forward, don't call yourself a felon, call yourself a forgiven felon.
Well, Jay Dan Gumm runs a large ministry both inside and outside prison.
Wow, that's just beautiful. Tell us a little bit about the prison system, and we were talking before the show about how the prison system is really not designed to give people a life after they leave.
Yeah, having experienced it firsthand, I know that if you take away the volunteers that submit programs that they want to teach to help them in, if you take away all those, prison is zero rehabilitative, and it's all punitive. And back when I was in prison, I've been out, it'll be 15 years in April that I've been out. They didn't have, I couldn't call, phone calls, they didn't have any of that. Now they have video calls, they have phone calls, they have it all. But it's really hard, even with all the volunteer programs, it's still hard because there's really no oversight and there's no protection for those classes sometimes that they can get out of hand. And if you're going to rehabilitate because of prison, it's really because of what you're doing inside your heart and your head. I was bound and determined to do the right thing. And no matter what my surroundings, no matter what the day room, there were so many things going on in the day room. I got blamed for stuff on a regular basis because I'm the good guy. I'm not going to get in trouble. So they think, oh, well, Jay Dan's not going to get in trouble. Let's just say it was his. And, and so that's the environment in prison. And there's not a whole lot of oversight. In other words, there's nobody that holds the prison system accountable. And even our judicial system needs a lot. I know some wrongfully convicted people that don't even call it the criminal justice system anymore. They call it the criminal legal system because there's no justice in the way they do things, from the sentencing to the wrongfully convicted. But even inside prison, the programs that are offered, like PEP and prison fellowship and different ones that schooling, they're only offered to a small portion. Okay, so if there's 2,000 men on a unit, there's probably only about 500 that are allowed to go to school to do all these programs. So it's basically set up, if you take a nonviolent criminal, put him in prison, he's going to come out. Either he's going to purpose in his heart to do the right thing. But man, Jeff, sometimes there's just guys that are smaller than me. I mean, thank God I was big and ugly because that got me out of a lot of stuff. But I saw a lot of little guys that couldn't fight their way out of stuff.
Right.
And things happened to them and they had to be a certain way because they couldn't do it. They couldn't fight their way out of it.
Yeah.
And so now you take a drug charged person, non-violent person, put him in prison with all these violent people, and then you expect him to come out without giving him any kind of rehabilitative programs in there,
right,
and be a normal citizen, and then you wonder why he comes back.
Wow.
But our system's set up for repeat customers. It's just what it is.
And your story is so inspiring. It inspired a documentary. We're going to roll a little clip right now.
My parole officer told me, I know a place for you.
I was committing a slow suicide is what I was doing. I felt like I had lost what God had given me.
Tell them the truth, Dad! My life is transparent now. It feels so good to be free from secrets and dark things.
One decision can decide the direction your life goes, and that one decision did at that time.
We used to break in buildings and steal copper. I'd stay in the buildings for 3 and 4 days.
We walked in prison just like that, handcuffed together.
We're here for him as a family, as brothers in Christ. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Wow, that's amazing. And you can see that on Roku, is that right?
Yes, it's on Roku and Tubi TV, T-U-B-I. I'd never heard of Tubi TV until our promoter came and said, it's on Tubi TV, so whatever that is, it's on there.
Well, I love what you're doing now with your podcast. The podcast called Background Check. We've got a graphic that we're going to put up so people can tune in. How do they find your podcast and tell us what it's about?
Yeah, so Background Check is all about when you have a criminal background, your life is pretty much, you can't live your life anymore without them doing a background check wherever you go. And it's hard to navigate life with that background check. But we kind of put a different spin on background. Instead of a negative connotation, we want to put a positive connotation on it. And so we bring people on. Most of them are just stories, me interviewing people that have risen above their background. Some of them wrongfully convicted. Richard Miles in the episode 2, in the latest episode, is Jeff Deskovic. They're both wrongfully convicted. So they had to rise above a background that was made up by police officers. And then we've had judges on there, lawyers. We've had House Representative Carl Sherman on there. And so these are all people that have to do with helping other people navigate life through backgrounds. We've had CEOs that have had to rise above backgrounds. So it's fun. Sometimes I just get on there and talk about a solo topic and just rant and rave a little bit because I like to talk.
Well, clearly you're a man of faith, and that shows, and it's right there, the cross is right there on your shirt. For the person watching right now who doesn't really think much about this problem, why do they need to care about this?
It's a generational effect. The reason mass incarceration of African Americans exists is because of our legacy a long time ago, several generations ago. And so if we continue down a path that perpetuates the same behavior, same racial disparity, same in sentencing, same parole, approval rating, all that stuff, if we continue down that same path, we're not leaving our grandkids and our great grandkids in a better position than we are now. And if we don't change something with our justice system, then it's going to get worse. And I don't know if we want to see what our society looks like worse than it is now. So, what we do is we try to take one person at a time. We don't even cookie cutter our program. We take them individual by individual, and we say, all right, how can we help you? You've been locked up 3 years. Let's see, you know what a cell phone is, you know what this is, you know how to use GPS. You've been locked up 30 years. You don't know what a cell phone is. You don't know what GPS is. And so we take each individual and we try to help them navigate life, their new life, but we try to teach them how to have the mindset where they're not just a felon, that they can rise above their past. They don't have to let it identify them. When I got my wife, when we were engaged, she had never been in trouble in her life. And because of that, her dad did not want me marrying him or her. And I didn't blame him. Hey, no father wants their daughter to be married to somebody who just got out of prison, lives with his mom and dad, no job, no car. So I don't blame him. But when we got engaged, she said, I'd love to live in these apartments over here. And I said, I looked at them, Bella Rossello luxury apartments. And I said, I'll try. And she didn't know what I meant by I'll try. So I filled out the application, handed it to her. And she didn't even look at any of the other part of the application. She just turned to that page that said, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And she said, Mr. Gumm, I'm sorry, we don't allow felons to live there. And right then I was ready to tuck my tail and run. And that's when I was like, no, this is not who I am anymore. And I said, I don't know if there's anybody here over you that I can talk to. And there was that day. I said, look, this is not who I am. Don't hold my wife hostage to my past. Let us start our new journey on, here. And they did. They said, we don't ever break this policy, but we're going to let you. And so we try to help these guys, and eventually we're going to have a resource center where we're helping everybody, men, women, vocational training, business opportunities, where we're not just plugging them into a warehouse job. We're teaching them how to start and run their own business like I do. So.
Jay, you're such an inspiration. I know there are many different ways to support you. One of them is by going to the store on your website.
Yes.
And, talk about some of the things that you've got on the store.
So we have our T-shirts. We have some winter hats this year. We have tank tops. It's not tank top weather yet. Almost. In Texas, sure. It's 12 months or 11 months out of the year. But we just there's so many ways you can sign up for the Roundup app. You can shop our smile.amazon and sign up for Forgiven Felons. You can buy right off our Amazon wish list and donate directly to the house the items that we need. You can go to the future plans page and see the plans for the resource center, and you can text right there to give towards that, or you can donate a building to us. If you have a building that you need to donate that we can use.
Well, I know I am confident that the people who need to see this are watching this right now. And you are so filled with the Spirit. It's been a real blessing to have you on the show. We're going to put your website up so everybody can get in touch. Forgivenfelons.org is the website. Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff.
You bet. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.